The millionaire lost everything. Until the gardener solved his life in seconds, Harrison Grant Sterling watched in despair at the computer screen, displaying red numbers, confirming his complete ruin. His technology company had lost the biggest contract in history after a mysterious leak of confidential information destroyed 15 years of hard work. That's when he felt a silent presence by his side. Lifting his eyes from the devastating screen, he saw a man in a green uniform quietly entering the room holding a cloth to clean the plants. "Mr. Harrison, are you all right?" asked the gardener in a calm voice. Harrison could barely process the words. Everything around him seemed unreal. Just hours ago, he was running one of the largest software companies in the United States, and now he watched his empire crumble before his eyes. The red graphs on the screen seemed to mock his misfortune, each descending line representing millions of dollars lost and dreams destroyed. "Mr. Arthur," murmured Harrison, finally recognizing the man who had cared for the office plants for 5 years. "I don't know if I'm all right. In fact, I think nothing will ever be all right again." Arthur Miller had spent the last years watching that man work tirelessly, always arriving before others and leaving last. At 60 years old, the gardener had developed a unique ability to sense when people needed help, even if they didn't ask for it. "Can I do something?" offered Arthur, moving closer to the desk where Harrison remained slumped. Harrison almost laughed at the irony. A simple man offering help when the best lawyers and consultants in the country had failed to protect his fortune. Yet, there was something in Arthur's calm voice that brought a moment of relief amid the chaos. "Unless you understand corporate espionage and know how to find out who leaked our secret projects, there's not much you can do," Harrison replied bitterly. The panoramic office on the 23rd floor of one of the most luxurious buildings in New York City witnessed the silent drama. The plants Arthur cared for with such affection contrasted with the coldness of the executive environment, creating small green oases amid the steel and glass. Arthur continued his work, carefully watering each pot while processing the information he had just heard. His experience as a silent observer had taught him much about the inner workings of that company. For years he had witnessed meetings, conversations, and situations that executives thought were private. "Mr. Harrison," said Arthur after a few minutes of silence, "I may be talking nonsense, but I've noticed some strange things around here that might help." Harrison finally took his hands from his face and looked at the gardener with curiosity. Any clue, however improbable its source, deserved attention in that desperate moment. "What kind of things?" he asked, trying to control his growing irritation with the whole situation. "Well, I work on every floor of this building. I take care of plants for several companies, and sometimes I overhear conversations I shouldn't," explained Arthur, pausing his work. The confession sparked genuine interest in Harrison. He knew Arthur only as the quiet man who appeared daily to care for the greenery, but he had never considered that this routine could provide privileged access to information. "Go on," encouraged Harrison, feeling for the first time in hours a spark of hope. "Last week, when I came to maintain the plants on the floor below, I overheard a strange conversation between your partner, Mr. Montgomery, and some men I didn't recognize," revealed Arthur, watching the businessman's reaction closely. Harrison felt his blood run cold. Silas Montgomery had been his partner for 12 years, ever since they founded the company together, after graduating in the same engineering class at the Hudson Institute of Technology. He had always trusted him like a brother. "What exactly did you hear?" asked Harrison, trying to keep his voice controlled. "They were talking about accelerating the timeline and mentioned the name of the competitor, the one that won the contract you lost," explained Arthur, noticing how deeply his words affected his boss. "Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing." Harrison's world seemed to spin. The possibility of betrayal by his closest partner was too devastating to process immediately. Silas knew all the company's secrets, had access to all the passwords and systems, and most importantly, knew intimately every project in development. "Are you sure of what you heard?" questioned Harrison, still resisting the idea that his best friend could have betrayed him. "I have a good memory for conversations, Mr. Harrison. When you work alone most of the time, you develop the habit of paying attention to details." replied Arthur with quiet conviction. The gardener went on to say he had noticed other strange behaviors from Silas in recent weeks. Secret meetings after hours, whispered phone calls, and visits from unknown people not on the official schedule. Harrison began to connect the dots. The last few months had been marked by a series of unfortunate coincidences, projects that mysteriously lost funding, clients cancelling contracts without plausible explanation, and information leaks that seemed to come from inside the company itself. Arthur, you said you work on other floors. Do you know other people who might have seen or heard something similar? Asked Harrison, beginning to see a possible investigation strategy. Yes, I do. We who work in cleaning and maintenance talk quite a bit. Sometimes people think we're invisible and say things in front of us as if we weren't there, explained Arthur with a sad smile. That observation hit Harrison like a punch to the stomach. How many times had he himself treated employees like Arthur as part of the furniture, discussing confidential matters in their presence without considering they were intelligent, observant human beings? Forgive me if I ever did that to you, said Harrison sincerely. No need to apologize, Mr. Harrison. I know you've always carried a heavy load. But now perhaps we can work together to find out what really happened, suggested Arthur, demonstrating a generosity that surprised the businessman. The partnership proposal was as unusual as it was necessary. Harrison realized his network of executive contacts had completely failed to protect him, while this simple man offered information that could be crucial to his salvation. What do you suggest we do? Asked Harrison, implicitly admitting he needed Arthur's help. First, we need to gather more information. I have some friends who work at competing companies. If your partner really is plotting something, maybe they've noticed strange movements there too, explained Arthur, revealing a strategic mind Harrison never imagined existed. The plan began to take shape. Arthur would use his informal network of contacts among cleaning and maintenance staff to collect information, while Harrison would discreetly investigate Silas's financial and contractual movements. As the afternoon wore on, Harrison was surprised by the depth of knowledge Arthur possessed about business operations. The gardener had studied business administration in his youth, but family circumstances forced him to abandon his studies to work. I've always liked numbers and planning, confessed Arthur while finishing watering the plants. When I tend to the garden, I apply the same principles: careful observation, long-term planning, and attention to detail. Harrison began to see parallels between the meticulous care Arthur gave to the plants and the systematic approach needed to investigate the alleged betrayal by Silas. Both required patience, keen observation, and the ability to identify problems before they became critical. The first concrete action was to review the company system access logs. Harrison discovered that Silas had accessed confidential files at unusual times, especially during weekends and early morning hours. The patterns revealed secretive behavior he had never noticed before. Meanwhile, Arthur contacted Mrs. Martha, who was in charge of cleaning at the competing firm that had won the contract. She confirmed having seen Silas on several occasions at the rival company's facilities, always in meetings that were not on the public schedules. Mrs. Martha said she always found it strange to see someone from a competing company walking freely through their offices, reported Arthur the next day. The evidence was mounting, but Harrison still struggled to accept the magnitude of the betrayal. Silas was not just his business partner, but had been his best man and confidant in difficult times. The idea that it all could have been an elaborate charade was almost unbearable. How can someone fake a friendship for so many years? Asked Harrison, more to himself than to Arthur. Sometimes people change, Mr. Harrison, or perhaps they reveal who they always were when the right opportunities appear, replied Arthur, with the wisdom of someone who had faced several disappointments in life. The investigation revealed that Silas had created a shell consulting company 6 months prior, coincidentally around the same time the problems at Harrison's company began to intensify. The shell company was receiving substantial payments from the competition, supposedly for market analysis services. Harrison discreetly confronted some trusted employees, discovering that many had noticed changes in Silas's behavior, but no one had dared to comment. Fear of retaliation and the corporate hierarchy had created a complicit silence. It's astonishing how power can intimidate people to the point of not reporting obvious irregularities, observed Harrison during one of his daily conversations with Arthur. That's why it's important to have people like me around, joked Arthur. We have nothing to lose, so we can speak the truth without fear. The statement made Harrison reflect on how he had built a social bubble composed only of people who depended on him financially, or had their own interests in pleasing him. Arthur was perhaps the first person in years to offer genuine honesty without a hidden agenda. The turning point came when Arthur discovered that Silas had scheduled a secret meeting for that night in the building's parking lot. Mrs. Gladys, the employee responsible for night cleaning, had overheard Silas confirming the meeting by phone. "This might be our chance to get concrete evidence," suggested Arthur. Harrison hesitated. The idea of spying on his own partner seemed to cross an important moral line, but the survival of his company and the pursuit of truth justified extreme measures. They developed a simple plan. Arthur would remain in the building's exterior garden, pretending to work on nighttime maintenance, while Harrison would position himself in a spot where he could observe and record the encounter. The night arrived heavy with tension. Harrison had never been involved in anything remotely resembling espionage, and his hands trembled as he adjusted the phone to record. Arthur, on the other hand, displayed an impressive calm as if such situations were routine. "Remember, Mr. Harrison, we are only seeking the truth. There is nothing wrong with protecting what is ours," Arthur reassured him. At 10:30 at night, Silas appeared in the parking lot accompanied by two well-dressed men, whom Harrison recognized as executives from the rival company. The conversation was revealing and devastating. "The timeline is ahead of schedule," said Silas. "I gained access to the new projects earlier than we expected." "Excellent," replied one of the executives. "With this information, we can move up our launch and eliminate any competition." Harrison recorded every word, feeling his world collapse again, but this time with a painful clarity about reality. Silas had not only betrayed his trust, but was systematically destroying the company they had built together. "The acquisition could happen within 3 months, Silas continued. "When the company is bankrupt, you can buy the assets for a fraction of their real value." The revelation was even worse than Harrison had imagined. It wasn't just about information theft, but an elaborate plan to completely destroy his company and acquire it for a pittance. Arthur watched attentively from the garden, noting every detail that could be relevant later. His experience as a silent observer proved invaluable at that crucial moment. When the meeting ended, Harrison and Arthur met in the office to process what they had discovered. The recording was clear and incriminating, but Harrison felt emotionally destroyed by the confirmation of the betrayal. "How will I confront him tomorrow?" asked Harrison. "How do I look into the eyes of someone I considered a brother, knowing he is trying to destroy me?" "One thing at a time, Mr. Harrison," advised Arthur. "First, we'll organize all the evidence. Then we'll think about the best way to use this information." They spent the early morning hours gathering documents, recordings, and testimonies. Arthur revealed he had an exceptional memory for dates and events, managing to chronologically reconstruct all the suspicious activities he had observed over the past months. "I worked in accounting before becoming a gardener," Arthur explained when Harrison praised his organizational skills. "I've always been good with numbers and details." The revelation added a new dimension to Arthur's personality. Harrison began to realize he had completely underestimated the capabilities and experiences of this man he saw daily, but had never truly known. "Why did you leave accounting?" asked Harrison, genuinely curious. "The company where I worked went bankrupt because of fraud by the directors. I lost everything, including my trust in people. I decided to work with plants because they are honest. If you take good care of them, they grow. If you neglect them, they wither. There are no lies in the plant kingdom," Arthur explained with a melancholic smile. Arthur's personal story echoed strangely with Harrison's current situation. Both had been victims of the greed and dishonesty of people they trusted. The difference was that Arthur had found peace in simplicity, while Harrison was still struggling to accept his new reality. "Perhaps you can teach me a few things about starting over," said Harrison, admiring the gardener's resilience. "The first step is accepting that some people will disappoint us, but that doesn't mean we should stop trusting everyone," Arthur replied wisely. The following morning brought the challenge of confronting Silas without revealing they knew of his treacherous activities. Harrison decided to test his partner with false information to definitively confirm his guilt. During the morning meeting, Harrison casually mentioned a revolutionary new project he was supposedly developing in secret. He provided specific details about non-existent technology and fictional timelines, carefully observing Silas's reactions. "Sounds promising," commented Silas, showing excessive interest. "Could you share more details with me?" The trap worked perfectly. The next day, Arthur reported that his contacts had observed unusual activity at the competing firm, with executives enthusiastically discussing a new project from the competition that they needed to quickly neutralize. "Now we have absolute certainty," declared Harrison, feeling a mix of relief at having confirmation and sadness at the confirmed betrayal. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The confrontation strategy required extreme care. Harrison and Arthur decided to gather all the evidence into a complete dossier before taking any legal action. The documentation included recordings, access logs, employee testimonies, and financial records from Silas's shell company. "We need to be as meticulous as you are with your plants," joked Harrison, watching Arthur care for a fern with surgical precision. "Exactly. Rushing can ruin everything. When you don't water a plant the right amount, it can die. When you water it too much, it can also die. Timing is everything," philosophized Arthur. The analogy applied perfectly to the situation. Confronting Silas prematurely could allow him to destroy evidence or build defenses. Waiting too long could result in irreversible damage to the company. Harrison began discreetly documenting all of Silas's unauthorized accesses to the company systems. The amount of stolen information was staggering: complete projects, market strategies, client lists, and even future expansion plans. "He wasn't just harming our current company, but sabotaging our future," observed Harrison bitterly. "People like that don't think about the long-term consequences," commented Arthur. "They only see immediate benefits." The investigation revealed that Silas's betrayal had deeper roots than it appeared. Conversations with long-time employees revealed that he had always shown resentment toward Harrison's natural leadership and the public recognition he received as the brain of the company. "It seems Mr. Montgomery always felt overshadowed by you," reported Samantha, a secretary at the company for 8 years. "He would make snide remarks when you were interviewed by the media or received awards." Harrison had never noticed these signs of dissatisfaction. His results-focused personality had caused him to neglect emotional and interpersonal aspects that might have revealed problems before they became destructive. "How could I have been so blind?" Harrison asked himself aloud. "Sometimes we trust the people close to us too much," consoled Arthur. "It's natural. The problem isn't trusting. It's not noticing when that trust is being betrayed." Arthur suggested a gradual approach to confronting Silas. Instead of revealing everything at once, they would start with subtle questions that would put him in uncomfortable situations, observing his reactions and gathering more evidence of his guilt. "It's like dealing with a sick plant," explained Arthur. "You don't pull it out immediately. First you try to understand the problem, then you apply the correct treatment." The method proved effective. In the following days, Harrison asked strategic questions about information security, employee loyalty, and possible internal leaks. Silas displayed growing nervousness, committing small contradictions that confirmed his guilt. A particularly shocking discovery came when Harrison analyzed Silas's personal financial transactions. Substantial deposits perfectly coincided with dates of major leaks, creating a clear pattern of payments for stolen information. "He was literally selling our company piece by piece," said Harrison, contemplating the bank statements. "At least now we know exactly what he did and when he did it," Arthur replied pragmatically. "This will make things much easier when it's time to seek justice." The courage to confront Silas finally came when they discovered he had planned an emergency meeting with investors for the following day. The goal was to convince them to sell their stakes in the company at low prices, accelerating the bankruptcy process. "We can't let this happen," declared Harrison with renewed determination. Then let's act, agreed Arthur. We have enough evidence, and we know exactly what he's planning. The confrontation was set to take place during the very meeting with the investors. Harrison would present all the evidence publicly, exposing Silas's betrayal in front of the people he was trying to deceive. On the morning of the meeting, Harrison felt nervous but determined. Arthur arrived early to tend to the plants in the office, positioning himself strategically to observe and intervene if necessary. "Remember, Mr. Harrison," whispered Arthur before the meeting began, "the truth is on our side." The investors arrived punctually, clearly concerned about rumors regarding the company's financial situation. Silas began his presentation with a speech about temporary difficulties and the need for urgent restructuring. "Unfortunately, our situation is more serious than we'd like to admit," Silas lied convincingly. "I recommend you consider selling your stakes before the losses increase." That's when Harrison stood up, interrupting the presentation. "Actually, our situation is quite different from what Silas is describing," Harrison declared calmly. The silence that followed was deafening. Silas visibly paled, realizing something was wrong. "Harrison, now is not the time to," began Silas, trying to regain control of the situation. "It's exactly the time," interrupted Harrison, activating the projector to show his evidence. "Especially because you all need to know the truth about who is really causing our problems." Harrison's presentation was methodical and devastating. He showed records of unauthorized access, recordings of conversations, financial receipts, and employee testimonies. Each piece of evidence was presented chronologically, building an irrefutable case against Silas. "These are records from the company's systems, showing that Silas accessed confidential information after business hours and immediately before major leaks," explained Harrison, pointing to the data on the screen. The investors watched in growing shock. Some began to murmur among themselves, clearly disturbed by the revelations. "This is a recording of Silas negotiating the sale of our trade secrets to the competitor," continued Harrison, playing the audio from the parking lot meeting. Silas tried to deny everything, but his desperate defense only confirmed his guilt. His explanations were contradictory and implausible, especially in the face of the mountain of evidence presented. "You can't believe these absurd accusations," protested Silas. "Harrison is clearly desperate and trying to find a scapegoat for his own failures." "Then explain these deposits in your bank account that coincide exactly with dates of major leaks," challenged Harrison, showing the bank statements. Silas's silence was more revealing than any confession. He looked around the room like a cornered animal, seeking an exit that didn't exist. One of the most experienced investors, Mr. Clarence Shepherd, rose slowly. "Silas, this evidence is too specific and detailed to be fabricated," he said in a grave voice. "Do you have any plausible explanation?" Things aren't how they seem," stammered Silas, his composure finally disintegrating. "Actually, they are exactly how they seem," declared another investor. "You betrayed our trust and systematically sabotaged this company." The meeting quickly transformed into an informal tribunal. The investors bombarded Silas with questions he couldn't answer satisfactorily. His attempts to shift the blame to Harrison sounded increasingly desperate and implausible. "How can you explain your consulting firm receiving payments from the competition?" asked one investor. "That was legitimate market analysis work," lied Silas weakly. "Market analysis that included stealing projects from your own company?" retorted Harrison sarcastically. The pressure finally broke Silas's resistance. In a moment of desperation, he partially confessed his actions, trying to minimize the gravity of the situation. "Okay, maybe I shared some information, but it was only to protect my personal investments," admitted Silas. "The company was failing anyway." "The company was failing because you were sabotaging it," accused Harrison coldly. The partial confession was enough to confirm all suspicions. The investors demanded Silas's immediate removal from all positions in the company and began discussions about legal action. Throughout the confrontation, Arthur remained discreetly at the back of the room, observing every detail. His silent presence provided moral support to Harrison, reminding him he wasn't facing that situation alone. After the tumultuous meeting, Harrison and Arthur met in the empty office. The tension was finally beginning to subside, replaced by a mixture of relief and emotional exhaustion. "Thank you," said Harrison simply. "Without you, I would never have uncovered the truth in time." "We uncovered it together," corrected Arthur modestly. "I just paid attention to what was happening around me." Arthur's humility contrasted dramatically with the arrogance that had characterized Silas's behavior. Harrison began to realize how he had surrounded himself with people who reflected and fed his own flaws, rather than challenging him to be a better person. "Arthur, I'd like to make a proposal," said Harrison after a few minutes of reflection. "What kind of proposal?" "I'd like you to become my special advisor for corporate integrity. We need someone who sees what really happens in the company, not just what people want us to see," explained Harrison. Arthur was surprised by the offer. "Mr. Harrison, I appreciate it, but I don't have executive training." "You have something far more valuable: honesty and an ability to observe," interrupted Harrison. "Besides, your accounting experience would be useful for monitoring financial irregularities." The proposal represented a complete revolution in the company's traditional structure. Harrison was offering a gardener a position of real power, based on merit and trust instead of diplomas and social connections. After careful consideration, Arthur accepted the proposal on the condition of continuing to care for the company's plants. "The plants keep me connected to what really matters," he explained. "Healthy growth, constant care, and patience to see long-term results." Harrison agreed enthusiastically. The plant metaphor had become a central theme in his new leadership philosophy. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, the following weeks were dedicated to rebuilding the company on more solid foundations. Harrison implemented transparency systems that ensured information flowed freely between all hierarchical levels. Arthur established informal communication channels that allowed employees to report irregularities without fear of retaliation. The first measure was to create an internal garden in the center of the main office. The green space would become a location for important meetings, symbolizing organic growth and transparency. Arthur personally supervised the project, choosing plants that represented different corporate values. "Each plant has a specific personality and needs," explained Arthur as he positioned a small bamboo near the window. "Just like the people in the company. Our job is to create an environment where all can thrive." Harrison watched, fascinated, as Arthur transformed the sterile space into a living oasis. The physical change reflected the cultural transformation he was implementing across the entire company. The investigations into Silas's activities revealed that the damage was extensive, but not irreversible. Much of the stolen information had not yet been fully exploited by the competition, allowing Harrison to develop defensive strategies. "The advantage is that we now know exactly what information they possess," observed Arthur during one of his strategic analyses. "We can anticipate their moves and prepare countermeasures." Arthur's analytical mind proved invaluable for rebuilding the company's competitive position. His ability to connect seemingly unrelated information allowed him to identify patterns that traditional executives could not perceive. One of the most revealing moments came when Arthur proposed a complete audit of all internal processes. "It's not enough to remove Silas," he argued. "We need to understand how he managed to operate for so long without being detected. This indicates systemic flaws that could allow similar future problems." The audit revealed significant gaps in oversight and internal controls. Harrison realized that his excessive trust in Silas had created institutional blind spots that facilitated the betrayal. "As CEO, I failed to create an adequate system of checks and balances," admitted Harrison during a meeting with the management team. "This cannot happen again." Arthur suggested implementing a rotating responsibility system, where no single person would have exclusive control over critical information or financial processes. The proposal met initial resistance from some managers accustomed to traditional hierarchies. "Change always frightens people who benefited from the old system," observed Arthur pragmatically, "but plants that resist seasonal changes end up dying." The botanical analogy became common language in the renewed company. Harrison began using gardening metaphors in his presentations and internal communications, creating a unique organizational culture based on sustainable growth. The financial recovery progressed more quickly than expected. With the information about the competition's activities, Harrison managed to anticipate their launches and develop superior products. Internal transparency significantly improved employee morale and overall productivity. "It's incredible how people work better when they trust leadership," Arthur commented after observing the increase in quality of the developed projects. Harrison fully agreed. The paranoia and secrecy that characterized the Silas era had been replaced by open collaboration and shared goals. An important discovery emerged when the IT team, now led by transparency principles, revealed they had noticed Silas's suspicious activities, but didn't feel comfortable reporting them. "We created a culture where questioning authority was seen as disloyalty," admitted Harrison. "That almost cost us everything we built." Arthur proposed regular garden feedback sessions, where any employee could express concerns or suggestions in an informal, retaliation-free environment. The sessions happened literally in the internal garden, removing psychological barriers associated with traditional corporate settings. The revolutionary concept attracted attention from specialized media. Business magazines began publishing articles about the green revolution at Harrison's company, highlighting how gardening principles were being successfully applied to corporate management. "I never imagined that taking care of plants would make me part of a business success story," Arthur joked during an interview. The irony wasn't lost. The man who had been practically invisible in the traditional corporate hierarchy was now cited as an example of innovative leadership and strategic thinking. Harrison used the media attention to promote values of integrity and transparency in the business world. His speeches at corporate conferences always included explicit credit to Arthur and other invisible employees whose contributions were traditionally ignored. "True business success comes from recognizing and valuing all the people who contribute to our results," Harrison declared in his presentations. "Not just those with executive titles." The message resonated deeply with audiences who had experienced their own versions of underestimated contributors. Many companies began implementing similar inclusion and transparency programs. A particularly moving moment came when Harrison was invited to speak at his former university. Arthur accompanied him as co-presenter, sharing perspectives on authentic leadership and the value of diverse experiences. "Formal education is important," Arthur told the students, "but wisdom comes from carefully observing the world around us and treating all people with respect." The students were fascinated by the story of how a gardener had saved a company through careful observation and moral courage. Many questioned their own assumptions about success and leadership. The company not only fully recovered from the damage caused by Silas, but achieved performance levels surpassing those from the periods before the betrayal. The culture of transparency and collaboration created an environment conducive to genuine innovation and creativity. "It's like comparing a plant that grows in nourishing soil to one struggling to survive in poor land," explained Arthur. "When you provide people with the right environment, they naturally produce extraordinary results." Harrison became a vocal advocate for ethical business practices, using his platform to promote systemic changes in United States corporate culture. His partnership with Arthur transformed into a symbol of how traditional hierarchies can be reimagined for mutual benefit. The personal relationship between the two men evolved into a deep friendship based on mutual respect and shared values. Harrison found in Arthur the wise and honest advisor he had always needed, but never knew how to value. "You taught me that real leadership isn't about commanding people, but about creating conditions for them to flourish," thanked Harrison during one of their afternoon conversations in the garden. "And you taught me that my observations and experiences have real value," replied Arthur. "We all need someone who believes in our potential." The transformation extended beyond the professional environment. Harrison began to cultivate more authentic personal relationships, applying lessons of patience and attention he had learned from watching Arthur care for the plants. His social life, once limited to superficial corporate events, expanded to include genuine relationships with people from diverse backgrounds. The prejudice that had prevented him from seeing value in individuals like Arthur had been completely eradicated. It's amazing how we change when we stop judging people by appearances or social positions, reflected Harrison. There is wisdom and kindness in places we never thought to look. Arthur maintained his characteristic humility, even with his new position and public recognition. He continued arriving early to personally care for the plants, maintaining a connection to the simplicity that defined his life philosophy. Titles and recognition are pleasant, Arthur would say, but real satisfaction comes from knowing we contribute to the growth of something greater than ourselves. The company became a model of ethical corporate governance, attracting talented employees who valued integrity above salaries. Staff turnover decreased drastically, creating a stable and collaborative work environment. The innovations developed under the new culture resulted in products that revolutionized the technology market. The combination of internal transparency and a focus on sustainable growth produced results that exceeded all expectations. When people trust each other and work toward common goals, there are no limits to what they can achieve, observed Harrison during an annual results presentation. The numbers confirmed his words. The company had not only recovered its market position, but had taken the lead in several important categories. The success attracted acquisition offers from competitors, ironically including the company that had tried to destroy them through Silas. "We reject all offers," Harrison declared publicly. "We've built something special here, and it is not for sale." The decision was unanimously supported by employees and investors, who recognized the unique value of the organizational culture they had created. The internal garden had become a national symbol of business innovation and social responsibility. Arthur established a mentorship program for young professionals, teaching principles of observation and systemic thinking that had been crucial to saving the company. The program attracted participants from across the United States, eager to learn from the philosopher Gardner. The next generation of leaders needs to understand that true power comes from serving others, not from dominating them, Arthur taught during his mentorship sessions. Harrison joined the program as a co-facilitator, sharing perspectives on how to overcome adversity and rebuild after betrayals. Together, they created a unique curriculum that combined business principles with life philosophy. The impact of the program spread beyond the direct participants. Many mentees implemented similar practices in their own organizations, creating a wave of cultural change in the American business sector. "It's like planting seeds," Arthur would explain. "You don't see results immediately, but with time and care, a small seed can become a tree that provides shade for future generations." The metaphor applied perfectly to the legacy they were building. The pioneering practices by Harrison and Arthur influenced companies across the United States, changes that would endure long beyond their individual careers. Years after the initial crisis, the company was frequently cited in academic studies on ethical leadership and organizational innovation. Universities regularly invited Harrison and Arthur to give lectures on overcoming adversity through authentic collaboration. "Our story proves that true heroes don't necessarily come from where we expect," Harrison would say during these presentations. "Sometimes, the person who can save your life is right in front of you, waiting for you to have the wisdom to see them." Arthur would always compliment with observations about humility and service. "We all have something valuable to contribute," he would add. "The secret is to create environments where those contributions are recognized and valued." The partnership between executive and Gardner had become legend in the business world, but to them it remained simply a friendship based on mutual respect and a shared goal of making a positive difference in the world. The indoor garden continued growing and evolving, each new plant representing a milestone in the company's journey. Employees often took visitors to see the space, proud to work for an organization that valued human growth as much as financial results. This garden reminds us daily that real growth requires patience, care, and attention to detail, Arthur would explain to visitors. Principles that apply to plants as much as to people. The company continued to prosper, but its true success was measured by the positive impact on employees' lives and the surrounding community. Social programs initiated by Arthur's suggestion provided professional training for underprivileged youth, perpetuating a cycle of opportunity and growth. Harrison became a national advocate for inclusive business practices, using his influence to promote legislation protecting workers from exploitation and discrimination. His personal transformation had expanded into a broader social mission. "True success only has meaning when it is shared," he declared in interviews. "There is no satisfaction in prospering while others suffer." Arthur remained a stabilizing force in Harrison's life, offering perspective and wisdom when external pressures threatened to compromise the values they had built together. His constant presence ensured that success did not corrupt their fundamental principles. The redemption story had become a source of inspiration for people facing their own crises. Books were written, documentaries produced, and case studies developed, but the central message remained simple: the courage to do what is right, even when it is difficult. "Our experience shows there is always hope," Harrison would conclude in his public reflections. "Even in the most desperate situations, solutions can come from the most unexpected places." Arthur would add his own wisdom: "The important thing is to keep your eyes open and your heart willing to receive help, wherever it may come from." Together, they had created more than a successful company. They had demonstrated that authentic transformation was possible when people came together around shared values and goals greater than individual interests. The indoor garden had become a sanctuary where employees sought inspiration and reflection. The plants witnessed important conversations, celebrations of achievements, and moments of overcoming challenges. The living space symbolized resilience and the capacity for growth even after adversity. "Every leaf in this garden tells a story," Arthur would say, observing the space that had become the spiritual heart of the company, of care, attention, patience, and love. The same qualities we need to cultivate in our human relationships. Harrison agreed completely, knowing that his own transformation had been possible thanks to the patient care and genuine attention that Arthur had offered him in the most difficult moments. The gratitude he felt transcended conventional professional or social relationships. "You saved me from more than financial ruin," confessed Harrison in a moment of vulnerability. "You saved me from becoming a bitter and isolated person." "We saved each other," corrected Arthur wisely. "I also needed to remember that my experiences and observations had value. You gave me that opportunity." The reciprocity in their relationship exemplified the principles they had implemented in the entire company. It wasn't about traditional hierarchy, but collaboration based on complementary strengths and mutual respect. The following years brought international recognition and opportunities to expand their practices to other countries. Invitations arrived regularly for consultations and implementation of similar programs in different cultures and business contexts. "Our approach works because it's based on universal human values," Harrison explained during an international conference. "Honesty, respect, and collaboration are languages everyone understands." Arthur complimented with observations about adaptability. "As a gardener, I learned that different plants thrive under different conditions, but they all need basic care: water, light, and nutritious soil. People are similar. They need respect, opportunities, and a supportive environment." The simple yet profound wisdom resonated with global audiences, confirming that the principles discovered on their journey had universal application. As the company continued to grow and evolve, Harrison and Arthur remained anchored in the core values that had ensured their survival and prosperity. The internal garden served as a constant reminder of their humble origins and the path they had traveled. "No matter how high we grow," reflected Harrison, "we must always remember where we planted the first seeds." Arthur smiled, pointing to a small sapling he had planted on his first day in his new position at the company. "This little sapling is now a strong tree that provides shade for the entire office," he observed, "just as our partnership has grown and strengthened to benefit everyone around us." The analogy perfectly captured the extraordinary transformation they had experienced together. From a crisis that seemed terminal, something beautiful and lasting had sprouted, which would continue to grow and benefit future generations. End of story. So, what did you think of this story of transformation and overcoming? I was moved by how Harrison managed to discover the truth about Silas, and how Arthur, even though he was just a gardener, had the wisdom and courage to help. Do you also have people around you who could surprise you with their wisdom? Tell us in the comments which part of the story impacted you the most. Don't forget to leave your like to support our work and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories like this one.